Wow, welcome. My name is Paul K. This is Saturday Mornings Outdoors. Every time you think you've seen everything here, it just comes up with just more stunning beauty. This is Saturday Mornings Outdoors, and my name is Paul K. We are on the banks of the Cape Cod Canal, and that fog just rolling through the canal level, but that's it. Every time you think you've seen it all, it shows you something more. It's unbelievable. Stay tuned. Let's see what happens. All right, so we're situated. We got the Mac chunks on the bottom, and we're fishing for the ever popular striped bass in the Cape Cod Canal in Massachusetts. And very unusual seeing the fog like this stick around, and it's very sticky today. As it's been the past few weeks, it's just like almost unbearable humidity, but it feels like July. Oh, wait a minute, it is July. It's like that. So, and high temperatures too. We're working on a west tide. Tide's going that way. The flip's going to be about 9:30, a few hours from now. And like I say, Mac chunks on the bottom, band stall and Penn reels and conventional rod and spinning rod over there. We're on the first quarter of the moon. I believe the actual technical quarter is the 13th of this month. And wind is direct out of the south. And the saying is, when the wind is south, it blows the bait into the fish's mouth. We'll see if that holds true. And looking for signs of life here. I see a few cormorants out, which is a good sign. The diving ducks or birds. And temperatures high 70s. It's probably going to go up, but they claim it's supposed to be cloudy today and chance of rain all day, which is maybe it'll stay overcast and keep the temperature down and keep the boat traffic down. And barometric pressure is 30.01 and falling, so that means a low is approaching. And those are the conditions today, and we shall let you know. So last week's show, there's a lot of strikes, but not a lot of hookups. I did catch fish, but a lot popped out, and assuming that it was the circle hooks, and a lot of guys were commenting they hate the circle hooks and all that. I kind of do too, because we were brought up with the J hooks, but to be honest with you, I don't even want to think about this, but I think it's probably true. I don't think it's coming back. I don't think they're going to come back. They already got us trained, to be ecology minded and all that, and whether it's good for the stocks, I don't know. And why I say that, we hear one thing what the fisherman is told to do, but then I see what's actually happening. For instance, like the regulations in Massachusetts, it's between 28 and 31, a generous 3-inch slot. You have a better chance of hitting the lottery. And yeah, I am complaining, but so that's that, and we're allowed 1 fish a day. Yet the commercial fishermen are allowed 15 fish a day over 35 inches, everything over 35. So I'm assuming the smaller, well, I pretty much know the smaller fish are the males, the larger fish are the females. So 15 fish a day at over 35 inches, right? These are rod and reel commercials, I believe. And so if they're trying to protect the stock, why are they killing off the females and allowing them 15 fish a day, and we're allowed almost 0 a day with the dumb slot? Just something to think about, I mean, it's just, it doesn't sound right, and we follow the rules, and we want to be sportsmen, and, try to do the right thing and everything. But when you see what's going on, I mean, is that because money? Because I don't think we put a lot more as recreational fishermen, I think, by far than the commercials do. So I don't know what's going on. You be the judge. I'll happily abide by the law, and I love the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. It's not them, it's NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And I follow the rules. Whatever they say, I'll do. Apparently, I mean, I believe in the law and order and all that, but I don't know. I don't get the logic. Maybe someone from them can, explain, So on that note, we are going to go back to the rat cave, and we're going to speak about old school fishing and how it was done back then. And pretty interesting comparatively to how it's done today with our circle hooks and, you know, all this stuff. And we'll see you at the rat cave. What's up, boys? Welcome to the rat cave. And the few things I want to go over that I think you'll find really interesting. Well, first is a basic tip that you all, if you don't know this, you'll find out real quick. And it's just basic gear care. Every time you're in saltwater fishing, all your gear that's touched salt water, you have to rinse it off. And you have to be adamant about it every single time. Whether you have expensive reels or not expensive reels, in 2 days, if you don't do this every single time, it'll just be a clump of rust. So you have to, simple, gently rinse it down all over, get water all over the place on the reel. Just rinse it. And the rod too. And do this to all the equipment that's been subject to the saltwater environment. And what I do is let it drip dry and then spray it down with WD-40 every single time. Wipe it off. Wipe off the WD-40, and that leaves a microfilm of protective anti-water coating, water repellent coating on it. So that's one simple tip, and no one covers that, but it's a basic in saltwater. Guys that are already fishermen already know this in saltwater, that fish saltwater. But if you're a beginner, you got to wash everything off, including your terminal gear. And we are in the infamous rat cave epicenter. Miss Denise says hello. And this is not fishing orientated, but you guys might get a charge out of this. I just completed making this. It's Native American Indian breastplate. It's a more hunting aspect, but it took me a few days to put this together. I had one for about 40 years, and it wasn't made of authentic materials. Any Native Americans watching will know what this is and can appreciate what this is. It's an Indian breastplate, but this is bone hair pipe from buffalo, and it's called bone hair pipe, and that's the actual part of the breastplate. It's got jingles and authentic French beads, and it took me a few days to make that, but it's my hunting mojo basically. And every time I bag an animal or something, I put a little part of it on this, and it's just a kind of a superstitious thing, but I think it's a pretty neat thing to look at, and I'm pretty proud of making that. It took me a few days to do that, but anyway, it shows you where my heart is at. It's always on either hunting or fishing. So this week's, what I wanted to show you, major feature was the Penn Squitter. This has a cult following, and back in the, I would say probably 80s on back, this was the quintessential casting reel for surfmen. There were many other reels, some guys like spinning, and back in the 40s even, but this has a cult following even today. It's made by Penn. It's called the Penn Squitter, and it's simple design. It's absolutely sturdy. It casts a country mile for the technology that was available at that time, and everyone fished with these. And it's just built solid. These are lifetime reels. It's got a 3-screw takedown, extremely simple takedown ability, so you can grease the inside bearings, and it's got everything that you need. It's got a clicker and adjustable for casting the pivot point. The only thing I wish it had, you can trick these out today. You can, they make cross pieces that fit in here, aluminum, and they make larger handles so that when you reel it, it increases the revolutions and makes it a faster reel. And they're really extremely popular today. I think for eBay, these are older reels, and on eBay, you know, almost mint ones, probably about $100. So, but they have cult following. I buy every one I see at flea markets, and they're pretty cool reels. Use these for decades and decades. The reason why I don't use these, I still use them occasionally, but I like the Penn Fathom and the because the bearings almost effortless. You get a quarter more distance with the newer style modern bearings. These really didn't have today's equivalent of bearings. If they could just make a bearing kit for these to make the spool revolve a lot easier, everyone would still probably use these. And these are the Penn Squitter, very desirable, cult following all up and down the East Coast. Anyway, I don't know how the West Coast guys look at these, but these are really one of the holy grail reels. And the final segment of this, I'd like to talk about. So, with that squitter, the way in the canal today is obviously in our state, and I think most states up on the East Coast now, what they're doing is it's J hooks, and the consensus from what I see in the comments and all that, most people don't like them. I'd rather myself use the J hooks, but I'm concerned with just, because they tell us to be concerned about the striper stock, I go with the circle hooks. But I would say since the 80s on back, since the canal's been around, everybody fished bait. Not many people fished lure. There were a few guys that fished lures, but the predominant way to fish was with bait. And so here's what they used would be a squitter set up, a conventional reel. 90% of the guys that fished it. And where do you see this? So you use standard treble hook for your bait, right? No J hooks. Canal fishing, you used a treble hook, and you would take your bait, and some guys would use a darning needle, and your chunk of mackerel like that, they'd punch a hole, and then you'd fit the chunk of mackerel right on the treble hook, all three trebles, as opposed to sticking it on one J hook. And a lot of times, because it's a J hook, it wouldn't really hold it that well as a treble hook would. You just take the whole chunk and slide it right over the shank, and you could barely see the treble hook in there. Then you tie on your leader to this, and you do that every time you rebait. Another way to do it, guys would say, that's the proper way to do it. Guys would save time, and they'd put a slit in the side of the chunk and just fit it over that so they wouldn't have to retie. But so they'd cast that out with their sinker slider rig or the equivalent. They didn't have sinker sliders back then. They used it's basically a swivel jam, a jam swivel rig. They'd have the leader jam into a swivel, and that's how they'd run that. And when the fish took this bait, it was all about meat. We didn't care about conservation because we didn't know about conservation. And that's how it was. And when you got a hit, the striper swallowed this, or bluefish, or whatever it was, and you socked it to him, man. And it was just, you set that hook like you meant it because, it's treble. And obviously, you're not going to release it. You've got hook a fish that has that treble in its belly, and it's going to be a sick fish, man. You can't release that. But we weren't about release. We were about meat. And a lot of guys actually were market pin fishermen that were selling as many stripers as they could because there was a big market for it. And but that's how they used to do it in the canal. And believe me, back in the 70s, I get a few comments. Very few guys fish, or I know of 2 other guys that fish bait in the canal regularly like I do. And that's why I'm trying to push it, because I want the beginners. Bait beats everything, as far as my opinion, most guys' opinion, in fresh and salt water. If you want to catch a striper or any fish, go with the live bait. That's the easiest way to do it. And I just enjoy it. I enjoy it, and I try to perfect the technique. And so, as I try to explain it to you, but back in the old days, that was the technique. It was all about meat, about treble hooks, and just catching fish, and that was the standard way to catch them. And looking back on that, it almost seems barbaric, but it was a different time. It's not barbaric. We were catching fish, and man, we caught fish, and basically the limits were way more lenient way more generous than they are now. But that was the technique, the standard technique used. Treble hook, sinker slider, and you cast out with your, and for that matter on the beach too, but that's mainly a canal with a treble. But hope you guys like that little flashback in history, and all the guys my age, I'm sure they're going, yep, that's how it was. And that's how it was. It's a lot of fun, and how things evolve, we try to adapt. So let's get back to the canal and see how that guy's doing. And we are back to the real canal, and that's how they did it back then. It's quite aggressive. It was all about meat back then, and I guess it's cyclic like everything else. It goes up and down, up and down. There'll come years when they'll come back and so forth, according to the graphs that we see. But back then it was really cool to see how simplified and relatively just, with the treble hooks, that hook set was everything, and everyone really misses that. But those treble hooks, they were just meat hooks, and you've got hook fish obviously with the trebs. You're gonna keep it. It's not, you ain't releasing that. I mean, unless by pure chance you caught them on the side of the mouth, but that's how it was done. So using that circle hook, just show you, once again, just leave this gap exposed, the gap, between the hook and the shank exposed, and get a good purchase on a good cut bait, having all that skin holding that meat on there. And once again, the fish don't know what that hook is. They take it, and that's how the circles work. But leave that gap open is the point. There's cormorants working right up about here, which is a great sign, which means bait. And need to be seeing that. In a future episode, I am a surfer, and being a surfer pretty much my whole life, surf locally around the New England area. I've been to a few other places too, but you learn a lot about the ocean. So on a very local popular beach in our area when we were much younger, my brother and I were surfing Nantasket Beach, and it's a very popular surfing beach. I'm sure you guys know where that is. And as we would be riding the wave, as the wave crests over, it stirs up the bottom. That's called the impact zone, and that stirs up the bottom. And we'd be riding the wave, and we were shocked to see stripers. You could see them as you're cruising along on the surfboard. And as a practical joke, once in a while I'd dive off and try to catch one with my bare hands, which is never going to happen. I mean, you might come close, but they're alive and they're slippery, and you're just not going to do it. But then a gentleman, for weeks at a time, was fishing. All he had was a hand line, and he was digging surf clams, and he'd bust the clams and throwing them around him, and he'd pull stripers out this big, just right in front of us as we were surfing. And that blew me and my brother's mind. And so we dug surf clams before for bait, and I started doing it from the surfboard. And you get pretty good at it after a while. And it's absolutely a simplified way of fishing. So maybe in the future I'd like to do first how to procure bait, just how to dig surf clams. You need nothing. You need your feet and your hands. That's it. And how to sense them, and how to feel where they are with your feet, and then you just dig them. And then generally you shuck them, and you don't have to. If you're fishing with them, you can just smash them with a rock and throw them around where you're at, and that sets around where you're at, and the stripers follow that, and every other fish, and that's hence the hand line. But one will be about just getting bait, and it's really fun just digging the surf clams. Getting a little elaborate with it, if you get a surfboard with a leash on it, and then I put a clam basket on the board and just fill that thing up in like an hour, and you go to a good spot, and then shuck them and then salt them down, and they'll last forever in the freezer. Great bait. And then another episode in the future, look forward to some stuff going on here. Birds. Yep. Actually catching them off the surfboard. It's kind of a bizarre thing that no one around here does it. I think they do it in the south. It's not bizarre, it's eclectic, in that most guys fishing from the beach, or all guys fishing from the beach, you cast out over the waves and you kind of bring your bait into the impact zone and catch fish that way. But on the surfboard, you paddle outside past the breaking waves and you're casting inward, so you get a really selective ability to place the bait just where you want it, and it's a simple setup. It's really easy to fish off the board. It's fun. It's nice and cool out there, and you can see the fish. You know, it's pretty cool. So look for that in future episodes. I plan on doing a couple of those. If there's surf there, I'm gonna surf. So, but if it's not, I'd love to show you guys that, how simple it is. It can be without $1,000 reels and $500 rods and all that. You don't need much to catch these fish. You know, if they're there, you'll catch them with bait. Those surf clams are massive too. They're like this big, and you can actually eat them. I actually tried making fried surf clams. One surf clam belly on it's this big, and I did it actually. I pulled it off, but they're really chewy. What they use them for, they're probably using a clam fritter around that doesn't have chopped surf clam in them, because they're strong tasting clam, and they're just big. You know, they're really big. Very unusual phenomenon happens when you fry them live, is they just kind of, like octopuses change colors and squid change colors in the water. Well, the clams when they're still alive and you batter them and you fry them, when they're semi-alive, they're basically dying. But when they're frying in the pan, they kind of just make this movement. It's hard to describe, but you can see their nerves kind of going like that. It's not grotesque. It's just, it is what it is. I mean, you can tell that's how fresh it is when that happens. Here comes a fishing boat. They're pretty good to eat, and most guys use them just for bait. Good looking boat. Heading out for the day. And away we go. This is without killing myself. Oh yeah, Mr. Linesider. Easy, bud, I'm gonna let you go. Let's get a little Hollywood on you. There's a good fish. Let's go! Alright. Oh, that was a good fighting fish. It's strange. It seems all the fish I've been catching for about 3 weeks now, they're all around anywhere from 28 to 32. Kind of in the slot limit. Kind of conversely, that last year I hardly ever caught a slot. It was either way under or way over. Very strange. You know, I guess things even out in the long run. But I'm wondering what kind of bait's in this water. I'm just not seeing anything here. Last week saw all kinds of bait. Didn't see much up close, but I see the cormorants working here, but I don't know if it's mackerel or what it is. Sperling or I don't know. They're here. So the tide is slowing down now. It's going to flip to that direction, east, shortly, hour or so maybe. And with this as being only the first quarter, the tides aren't that strong, so it's kind of a gradual. I think the slacks will last longer on the weaker moons too. I think that's how it kind of goes. when you got like a new moon or a full moon and the tide's cranking, it's like 15 minutes dead slack, and then it picks up the other way, and you're back in the action about 45 minutes later. With the not so strong pulls, I think I don't know, they seem to last longer, the slacks. But that's something I'll watch for, just to get better reference on. Question being, are slack tides, the time of no movement between tides, is it longer on the weaker moons and shorter on the harder moons, you know, like the new and the full? And there's two cormorants working out here, which is a greater sign, and it's starting to rain now. Not enough to put the foul weather gear on, but we'll see. And this is an unusual sailboat coming through. Not as many hits this week as last week. Last week there was one every 10 minutes, very exciting. And this week it's had 1.5 hits so far. That's an unusual looking. That is Rian Marie. Looks like a racing sloop, I believe that would be. Some type of big racing sailboat. Once again, bring your wallet. Never know what's going to come floating by. I'm waiting for the mermaid. This one's a much smaller sailing boat, but he's got a paddle board on the edge there. Kind of an unusual combo. Surfers don't like paddle boarders because they have much larger, wider, longer wave boards, and they can catch smaller waves way outside easier than we can, and it's much easier to do. So there's a little dislike there. They don't get the respect. Well, the fog moved off basically. Boat traffic's picked up, and the bait is getting mushy low. I hate that. And so we're gonna wrap this. Kind of strange. We're in a pattern of one fish shows. Like I don't know. Last week had potential, but there's a fish hawk. It's not I don't know. It is what it is. I'm blessed to have caught that. And so thank you guys, gals, for sticking around for this portion of the show. And we'll see you at the spot check area of the show. See ya. Alright, so this isn't spot lock yet, but this is just a contour thing that really useful on the canal. See how the line, the where the water meets the land, and there's certain area where points jut out. Well, when the tide gets lower, there are certain areas on the canal that there's points that go way out, and they're extremely desirable, and guys try to race to them. Once you get to them, because you can walk out, you know, you can get out 30, 40 feet into the canal without getting your feet wet, and thereby giving you more casting distance. And you can see by the features how the points are where there's more apt to be. This is high tide now, but where the points are apt to be when you see prominent little points coming out like that. So when you come back at a low tide, you'll really see them, and then mark the pole down. That's it. That's how we do it. You mark the pole down. You get a book and you get all your numbers going. You mark those poles down where that point, and write fishing point or clamshell point, or whatever you want to call it. Also, remember, I'd mentioned this a couple times, but it's very subtle. See, there's paths that are worn here as you go along, and there's just paths for no apparent reason. There's a reason why those paths are there. There's something down there that's attractive to fishermen, and it's either a hole or a point or there's some feature that guys are fishing it regularly, and it's a very subtle thing. That took me a long time to learn here, but as you walk along the canal access road, you'll see these, and you'll do well to keep those numbers. So this week's spot lock is the Bourne Recreation Area, and they're at pole 310 if you're going by poles, but it's easy to access this area, this recreation area, because it's right below the Bourne Bridge. You can't miss the Bourne Bridge. If you look for the at the base of the Bourne Bridge, traveling along the roads along the canal on the Cape Cod side, you'll see the signs for the Bourne Recreation Area. And this is like your gateway to the canal because it leads you plenty of ample parking here. There's restrooms, and they have functions up in there every now and then. And there's access to the road that goes the whole length of the canal on the Cape Cod side. So this is the Bourne Recreation Area. And for fishing anywhere along through here, along the abutments, whatever side the tide is, so the tide's running east, if you fish on the opposite side of whatever side the tide is running, there's holes on both sides, but the fish are going to hang out in front of that. Because the current's going this way, the fish are going to hang out on that side and just dart out at stuff that's drifting by. And then conversely, when the tide's heading west, go along that way. And that goes for any abutments and any bridge anywhere with any kind of cranking current like this. Also, at nighttime, fantastic spot. There's shadows here, and the stripers are going to be in the shadows, right along that shadow line, and that goes for anywhere else that you're fishing in the salt water. You fish that shadow line, right along that shadow line, the stripers are hanging out, and they're waiting to ambush bait that's coming through in any direction, but they like to hide in the shadows. So work the shadow lines, work both sides of this here, and you'll do well. And you'll also access this the access road. Now, remember I was talking about points, prominent points? There's one right there. If you look at the tip of my finger, you can even see the rock sticking out, but at low tide, that goes way out. And you know, you got 30 feet, 40 feet, so you can cast out further. So they're features that are good to look for and make fishing easier and more successful for you. So I hope you like this week, and hope it's helping you out. And it took me my life to learn these. You guys can show your appreciation by liking, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you. And we'll keep at it next week. If you can't make it down here, just keep showing up here every week, and you can come along with me and watch us. So until next week, guys, take care, and we'll see you then. See you.